Hey there, members of the Night Crew, and folks who just love horror. Welcome to the Night Crew podcast, where shadows breathe and monsters listen. This is the podcast where we get cozy with the creepy, the frightening, and the just plain undead. I'm your host, Brad Ricks. Now, before we jump in, a quick reminder that the Night Crew 2 Bloodlust is now available on Amazon and on my website, bradricks.com. Oh, and I also have the Night Crew podcast t-shirts available. Order a book or two and a t-shirt. Now, on today's episode, I'm joined by PD Alleva. We cover everything from psychological horror, the madness of line editing, and why humanity might be the scariest monster of all. Into the virtual studio we go. All right, so today I have PD Alleva. I knew I was going to mess that up. I have PD Alleva joining me in the virtual studio. PD, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you. How are you?
It's good to hear. Better than I should be. I mean, I'm sitting here. I have my wonderful glass of some Basil Hayden rye, so I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying my
relaxed, calm, smooth, having a good night, right?
Amen. That's the way it works. One of these days, hope that my wife will actually let me smoke in the house, in which case I will have my cigar going while I'm doing these. But that's probably going to be on the next house that we own in my outdoor shed. Because I know there's no way she's letting me smoke a cigar in the house. All right. This is off to a great start. This is going to be fun.
Let's have fun, correct. Talk books, right? Books, movies, everything. Horror, keep going.
Shoot, yeah. All right. So I do like to start off with just that normal, wonderful writer question that, we always get, which is, tell me about yourself, a little bit about your career. How long have you been writing? What was your first book? All that kind of fun stuff.
Okay. All right. PD Alleva. I write horror, sci-fi, and psychological thrillers. I have been writing since I was, as I always say, knee-high to a grasshopper. So since I was a kid, right? I remember writing a story with a friend of mine in second grade about a hamster that gets lost in school, survives on crayons for 10 years, and then comes out terrorizing children at school. And that was second grade, right? And I believe I was influenced by a movie called Alligator, a B-rated movie from the 80s called Alligator. Right. Other than that,
those are the best movies.
They are the best movies. I agree. B-rated 80s horror movies are fantastic. Right. Definitely up there. My favorite being Return of the Living Dead. If you've ever seen it or if you've never seen it, you have to watch it. My wife, who does not watch horror movies, watched that horror movie with me and laughed her ass off the entire time. That's how funny that movie is. Right.
Yep.
But other than that, writing too, like even back then, I would go see a movie like Ghostbusters or Goonies, and I would come back and I would write the novelization, which is more than likely 5 pages, right, at that time. But I just love the movie and I love the creative process. And then when I was 12 years old, I wrote my first novel, which was probably about 250 handwritten pages, which is more fantasy based on a dream I had and my love for Dungeons and Dragons at the time. And then I get into my high school years and it's all about teenage angst. And I started writing a lot of poetry at that time, which then brought me into short stories and then bigger novels at the time. And then when I was 24, I had my first child, right? And when you have your first child and you're not making any money, what do you need to do? You need to go join the workforce. So I became a psychologist. I had a fantastic career as a psychologist and a hypnotherapist. And since then, I've been writing a lot of books. I published my first book in 2011 called Indifference, which is more literary. I kind of refer to it as my version of Catcher in the Rye. It's about a misdiagnosed paranoid schizophrenic who discovers during a midnight romp through Manhattan that he has the powers to heal people. First published book. I've written a couple other books, A Billion Tiny Moments in Time as well, and that was kind of like what I refer to as my Hallmark movie. It's a literary gem, a metaphysical novel about immortality as well. In 2020, I wrote my first sci-fi novel, and that was called the Dark Veil series, The Rose Volume 1, and it's about alien vampires subjugating the human population after World War III. I've referred to it as a bloody, gory Star Wars for ancient alien fans. All right? Especially as a Star Wars fan, in the last couple of movies that came out, I felt I had to do something to, give my fellow Star Wars fans something to read that they're going to love. And that was the Dark Veil series. And then, of course, I write horror. I've written many horror books, especially the one that we're probably going to talk about, the Sleepy Hollow incident, which has a crazy backstory that goes all the way back to the 90s. And then I wrote Golem. That's my psychological horror novel, followed by Jiggly Spot, which I refer to as a satirical cosmic grindhouse horror fantasy thriller.
That's a mouthful. Also,
my homage to B-rated slasher films of the 80s and the old grindhouse novels, the grindhouse movies of the 70s. It's just good, gory, fun. It was my experiment to prove that there are no limits to the human imagination. That's my Jiggly Spot. All right? And Jiggly Spot is a half-human, half-warlock carnival clown who moonlights as a drug-dealing pimp and lackey for demonic entities from the planet Shibolba. And in 2019, he has been tasked with facilitating the Cannibal Cafe, the celebration that is going on with all the demons when they come down to Earth and they go to the Cannibal Cafe and eat a bunch of humans. And he has to pull this task off because in 2019, his mentor was arrested by the FBI, and then it all falls on. And if you really want to think about it, you'll find out who that mentor is on the very last chapter. So enjoy finding your way all the way through that novel.
I am going to have to add that to my TBR because that definitely sounds very intriguing. And some of that sounds like you went to like a random generator of sorts and said, give me a whole bunch of stuff and see how much I could kind of put together.
Like when you're writing a novel like that, it's like you got to crack your skull open and let your brain just breathe and let everything that's in your brain just come out and drop onto the page. That was probably one of the most fun novels I've had actually writing a novel at that time because I knew what I was in store for. It's like, let's just have fun with this one. Let's throw the whole the kitchen sink at this and have a great time. Yeah,
it definitely sounds like a good time. So yeah, that one will be migrating up my TBR quite rapidly. So I'm gonna have to definitely check that one out. So I usually ask this question a little further in, but since we're talking about your book stuff right now, I will ask. So of all the books that you've written, what's your favorite?
Okay, so I've had that question before, and I want to look at this question. That's almost the same thing as asking me which child is my favorite, and I have four. Right? Four.
I was going to say, I usually hear it. It's kind of the equivalent of pick your favorite kid.
It is. It 100% is. But I mean, they're all special for their own specific reasons, obviously, right? But you go with Jiggly Spot because, like I said, it was all just about let's just have fun and just let the brain go and just have fun with that one. So that was definitely the most fun to write. But the new one with the Sleepy Hollow incident, it's 4 books, so it's a series, right? Now, it's also multiple points of view, multiple characters. And the most fun I've had with any book I've ever had has been with the Sleepy Hollow incident as far as line editing, like the final edits. I've fallen in love with line editing. To me, it's like a painter, right? They paint this nice picture, and then what does the painter do at the end? They kind of like blow it up, right? Put it right in front of their face, and they really get into the fine details and start fixing everything up. And that, to me, is what line editing is. So, and that's what I've been doing with the Sleepy Hollow incident, is that fine detail line edit. And I've had a great time doing it. So that's been a lot of fun. And that's been going on for a long time. I mean, with 4 books, I've been writing this book for over 3.5 years. It's getting close to 4 years when February comes in 3 or 4 or 5 months from now. That's a long time. So putting that extra precision on it at the end, I mean, it's gone through a gazillion rounds of edits at this point, but are we ever satisfied as writers with the finished product? I don't think so, right? I can take it with my first book and look at it now and say, well, this sucks. Let's completely redo it. We need a whole new line edit and add this and add that, or take this out or take that out, in my mind, at least, and I don't speak for all authors, but to me, it's like a book is never really finished because we could always go back and make it better. Well, at a certain point, we just let it go. Maybe during the 10-year anniversary, we'll look at things and say, hey, newly edited and reformatted or whatever the hell it is, special edition, here you go, and have fun with it, And that's just us being our perfectionist self to say, I need to get back there and do something with it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it never seems to be finished. I mean, I look at the ones that I've published and I go back and read something. I go, I probably could have said that better. And I don't think you ever, you almost have to like just set it aside and not look at it again. Now I know with a series that's hard because sometimes you have to go back and be like, okay, well, what the hell did I do back in, book one of.
It's a lot but going back through it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say but I know like with the standalones, I try not to, I'm like, okay, this is done. I'm gonna set it aside and not look at it.
Leave it
because if not, you do start tearing yourself up about small little things that and I think part of that just becomes with growing as a writer. I mean, with every book that we do, I think we are fine tuning and tailoring our craft with every book. And so when you start going back and looking, you're looking at it from the eyes of the writer that you are now and not the eyes of the writer that you were then.
And that's why I have trouble doing like live reading sometimes, right? Because I'm doing the live reading and I'm like, oh, I could change that. But keep reading because people are listening, just don't stop here and think about this edit that's going on in your own fucking head at the moment, Just keep reading. It's okay. They don't know, But yeah, we could always, and that's what I love about being a writer is like we're never done, right? So it's always about working on the craft, That's why I love other authors, indie authors, and what are they doing and how are they presenting this? And that's like with new authors, I always give them the same advice all the time, right? Study the craft. As you're reading a book, right? If you're not reading a book, please don't write a book, but please be reading books. And I'm assuming you're reading a book. So if you're reading this book, stop. Actually look at it. How did the author go from one chapter to the next? How did the author introduce a new character? How's the author handling dialogue? Because I guarantee you that author, after every piece of dialogue, is not saying she said, he said, right? They're doing different things because obviously the reader knows who the hell is talking at this point. You don't have to say he said, she said all the time. Take that stuff out. It becomes too redundant. Like things like that. And just by reading other people's books, when you stop and study their craft of how they're presenting information, that is information that you could take to incorporate it with yourself and in your own writing that goes a hell of a long way. Study the craft. There's always a craft to it, and there's always like a formula that's going on as well. There's a formula behind everything. Behind a great movie and a great book, there's a formula behind it. Figure out what the formula is. And oftentimes that formula is different per genre. It could be different for psychological horror or psychological thrillers compared to extreme horror, right? Figure out what the formulas are that are going on. And kind of incorporate that into your own. So one question. So I didn't know that you were a psychologist. So I'm kind of interested in that. So being a psychologist and, kind of I'll say kind of, understanding the psyche a little bit more as you are writing, especially things like horror, do you find yourself kind of diving into almost a clinical aspect of what may be going on, especially like in a killer's mind or something like that? 100%. What's funny is I was a writer before I was a psychologist. I always tell people that being a writer made me a better psychologist. But now being a psychologist also has made me a better writer because I understand people more and how they're operating. And when you understand how the human brain develops and thinks, especially pertaining to belief systems they have in their brain, now you can project that onto your own characters. Well, this is the person's stance and this is their concrete belief system. So they're going to view this situation in one way. And then you can differentiate between who's your hero, who's, your villain, who is the side character, like how are they viewing all this stuff? And it kind of just melds together like that and molds together. Being a psychologist definitely helped me in that regard, right? I write psychologically scathing novels. I mean, being a trauma therapist, you'll definitely get there over a 20-year period, right? To me, the psychological component is obviously probably one of the most important concepts of what's going on. I mean, there's gore. I mean, I love my gore. Trust me. I just wrote a novel, a series about medieval torture. We'll get to that in a second, I'm sure. Sleepy Hollow, right? I love my descriptive, but the psychological component is what connects to the reader, you know? Because they can put themselves in that situation, or they can understand someone else close to them who thinks like that and would do that in that situation. And it makes it more plausible, and it makes it more real, right, for the reader.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess talk a little bit about your writing process. You know, do you see yourself as more of a pantser, a plotter, somewhere in between?
Definitely in between. Definitely a hybrid on that. I used to be, long time ago, sit down and shut the hell up and just wherever the hell it goes, it goes. You know, the old flying by the seat of my pants. Over time, especially when 20, 30 years ago, my biggest fear on the planet was editing. Biggest fear on the planet was editing. Did not want to do anything. Hey, the book is done. Just read it, right? All right. So it's filled with typos and you probably don't understand it, but why? It's great, isn't it, though? You know, why don't you just read it? So I had to fall in love with editing, but through that process of falling in love with editing, it made me a more technical writer. So even when I'm just writing now, right, I always have the beginning and the end of the novel. How we get there is the fly by the seat of my pants type of thing. But even when I'm writing at that point, the subconscious mind is working as far as technical aspects are going and kind of incorporating that as I'm writing. Now, does it work 100%? No. You can't write a full novel and not have to edit it. You still have to go back and go and have a shit ton of edits. But it definitely helps because you understand, okay, I'm doing this here because of this editing reason. So that makes perfect sense. And now I don't have to fix this one sentence here because it's already been done in the correct way. Like passive voice versus active voice type of thing. You know? Simple.
I know editing is definitely not the part that I enjoy the most, I will say. So I don't say I avoid it. If you ask my wife, she would say I avoid it because she's the one that usually edits my stuff. At least she gives it she's the first reader and the first editor, you know. And so if you ask her, then she'll say that no, I avoid it like the plague. But I promise I do give it at least a glance.
Understood. Is your wife an editor? Is that what she does? Or she's just your number one fan?
She used to be a teacher. And so, she goes through it like I've even joked on the podcast for it. You know, I print out all of the pages, you know, from the novel. I hand it to her and she goes through and makes notes on every page, every page. And so then she hands it back to me and I swear it's like I fell to paper because it's just notes all over the place.
Does he use the red pen for you?
Occasionally she changes it up when the red ink runs out, but
that's a great resource, though. That's fantastic, especially as being someone who's your first reader and she knows what she's talking about.
Definitely, and I always say, you know, even usually when I do a book launch and I'll do a little Facebook Live thing or something, and I will say, you know, if you enjoyed the book, the first person you should thank is my wife because she is the one who helped get rid of a lot of my bad habits. And, you know, because, you know, she's going through and she's marking out stuff. And she's like, you don't need to say this at the end of the sentence because we already know it's you. You don't have to say, I did this to myself. No, you just did this. And so she's like, you don't have to put this stuff at the end. And so, you know, cleaning up a lot of crap that's extra that's in there.
The little redundancies that are in there that you don't need in there. It's like the reader knows this shit already, dude. You're telling them the same thing over and over again. Stop telling them the same thing. They get it, all right, asshole? Stop doing that, right? It's like, okay.
I think she has said those words verbatim. I always, you know, we always joke. I was like, I know I'm not Dickens. I'm not getting paid by the word. I know I need to clean that up. But, all right. So enough about me. I do want to, you know, we've kind of hinted on it. So let's talk about your latest series that you have. It's a 4-book series, called The Sleepy Hollow Incident. And now I know you're releasing it. I know you had at the time of this recording, I think book 1 just came out a week or so ago. And you're doing it like really quick releases. So it's like book 1 and then a couple weeks later, book 2, a couple weeks later, book 3. I think by the time this episode comes out, will be either 3 is about to come out or has just come out. So, but really quick kind of release schedule there. So first, let's talk kind of about the release schedule. Why'd you decide to kind of do an accelerated schedule like that versus kind of spreading it out? And then I definitely want to dive into what it's all about.
Definitely. Okay. So the old rapid release is what I went with. I figured this out over time, right? In the beginning, I was like, well, just because Sleepy Hollow Incident actually represents book 3 in the Dominion of Shadow series, meaning that Golem is book 1, Jiggly Spot is book 2, Sleepy Hollow Incident is book 3. All standalone. So you don't have to read the first 2 books to understand what's going on, but they are interconnected. So you'll get some characters in Golem or in Jiggly Spot, some Golem and Jiggly Spot characters or themes and stuff like that are in the Sleepy Hollow Incident and all vice versa and stuff like that. It became readily apparent, I'd say around part 2 that I was writing part 2, then I'm like, I think this is going to be a lot longer than I've been thinking that it's going to be, And then over time, I knew that it was a juggernaut. It was going to be a very big novel. We're talking like the Stand or It type of like length, maybe even longer. And I'm like, okay, so what do people like to do now? People do like to read series, right? So, and then with Jiggly Spot was a long novel too, 156,000 words. And some people said, I wish he had broken it up in a couple different books. So I kind of took that advice and said, maybe I should do that with this novel. And then Damon Manx came out with something called The Ojanocks. Great series, great book. And I'm like, all right, so that's kind of like what he did. And people seem to enjoy that, the whole rapid release. So why don't I kind of imposter syndrome? I love you, Damon. But I was like, all right, maybe that's a good way to go. So that's the way I planned it. Do rapid release, let it go, get people involved. Here's book 1, gives you 3 weeks to read book 1. And then after you read book 1, you're going to be head over heels. You're going to say, I have to have book 2, and it'll be right there for you. You don't have to wait for it, type of thing. So that's why I did the whole rapid release. All right. And what was the other question? Yes, 2 there, dude. Right.
Well, yeah. So first was about just the why you decided to kind of do the rapid release versus, I know like with my own series, we're doing a book every about 6 or 8 months is where what the schedule is. Granted, I don't have all the series written, so there's no way I'm coming out every 3 weeks. But so that was the first was why the rapid release. The second was just, I guess, now talk about the series. Tell us about what is it about? I mean, with the title Sleepy Hollow in there, you definitely kind of already have a image in your head a little bit, with all the history of Sleepy Hollow. So
Gothic tale. It is about a writer who has been plagued by a person that in the beginning it kind of seems like he is like a imaginary friend. Right? He comes from a very troubled childhood, and he calls this person the Man in Black. And I even make a reference to this. That sounds like a King novel in the book, right? So he calls him the Man in Black because he's always dressed in black, right? But as time goes by, some tragedies happen I won't get into. He winds up falling in love with this woman called Laurie Francone. And then they get engaged. But on the eve of their engagement, they get into a car accident that leaves him disfigured and scarred and has her in a coma and on the brink of death. So what does he do? He goes to this imaginary friend, the Man in Black, and makes a deal with him because he knows he has supernatural abilities and can do this to make sure that his fiancée lives. So he makes a deal with him to bond with this demon. And that is the crux, the heart of everything we're going for. Now, unfortunately, as things often happen in life, after he makes this deal, the relationship dissolves. I won't get into how it dissolves, but there's many forces going against these two ever being together for the rest of their lives, and the relationship dissolves. What happens at that time is he retreats to a very foreboding and abandoned mansion in the middle of the western woods in Sleepy Hollow, and he kind of gets, during this period of time, he believes that he's inherited this property from a long-lost uncle twice removed on his mother's side. I think those are the exact words that I used. I know that because I edited that actually about 3 hours ago, right?
in my head, I'm hearing, from Spaceballs, my father's brother's cousin's uncle's former roommate,
And they're making part 2 soon too. Did you hear that?
Yep, I did.
Can't wait.
Yep.
Can't wait. So he goes
continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Right. He goes to this abandoned mansion and he gets what's called a servant that comes with him, that comes with the house. And the servant's name is Wren. Now, Wren you meet in part 1. He has a big role in part 1. Wren is my, first of all, Wren came up completely organically. Really quick backstory. I've written this story twice before. Once as a screenplay in the late 90s, and then once as a novel in the early 2000s. Both were lost during what I refer to as the Great Laptop Tragedy of 2005.
That sounds terrible.
But it's okay, because the book that I wrote now, right, is the book that I've wanted to write, and I was not mature enough as a writer to get it done then. So there's always reasons behind a tragedy. However, Wren was not part of those stories in the original stories. So when I kind of created Wren, he came up very organically, and I described Wren. Now remember, this is 3.5, 4 years ago. So when I was describing him, I have always been in love with a silent horror film called Nosferatu. So when I created this character, he looked exactly like Nosferatu. And as a matter of fact, everyone in the story thinks that he looks like a vampire. So he's the servant helping out Mark in this new abandoned mansion, where all of a sudden, throughout Sleepy Hollow, for some unknown reason, all these dead bodies start to show up, and they are all recipients. All the dead bodies have the same similarity. They're all recipients of medieval torture devices, which then starts our police procedural within the novel. All right, with Detective Stephen Carver trying to figure out why the hell who's doing all these murders, and it brings them to this abandoned mansion. And even more than that, the entire backstory is told through this detective, which pertains to the demon's history and connection to Sleepy Hollow, which goes to the backstory, which is told in a very unique way. I won't give too much away of how it's done, but through Washington Irving, man himself, is in there, right? Projecting, he's kind of telling this backstory, because the demon has not just come here now, he's been in Sleepy Hollow for a very long time. And that's the whole backstory you get, and it's kind of told by way of the detective figuring all this stuff. Where was I? Back to the lovers, right? So he goes to this abandoned mansion in the Western Woods, but she goes back to the Hamptons with her mother. And then it's all about the two of them kind of like coming together and how they come together, right? What is the reason behind it? Because there's a hell of a lot more going on in Sleepy Hollow, New York, than just a guy who sells his soul to save the woman he loves. You got a lot going on there, especially over $4. Let's just put it that way. But the character Wren, I will say, to this point in my writing career, has been my absolute favorite character to ever write. He stole the friggin' show. I will say that. Like I always say, my characters give a performance, and I'm just the one typing. They're actually the ones telling me what to do. And his performance was fantastic. Just what happens to him throughout the novel, people are going to be cheering for that guy, even though he's an evil son of a bitch and does a lot of nasty things. That's all I gotta say. But his name is Wren. But I won't tell you what his last name is, because when you actually read the novel and you figure out what his last name is, when I tell you, which also came out organically, I'll tell you. I didn't even realize what I was doing until I'd say about a couple months later when I actually read it. I said, wait a minute, that makes perfect sense. It must have been a subconscious thing from watching past Dracula novels or movies and stuff like that, right? But his last name is fantastic. You'll absolutely love it. I could tell you love it already. You're a vampire fan?
Very much so, yes.
I know it, right? So Dracula?
Oh, yeah.
When you read Wren, you're going to love Wren. It's definitely a fact, 100%. Is my favorite character to write.
Yep. So, yeah, that's going to... between Jiggly Spot and your Sleepy Hollow instance, and fill up my TBR there. Jeez. I got to stop doing these interviews, and so I can
You're screwed, man. Everyone you talk to is like, I want to read that book, right?
I know. Somebody had posted on Facebook once about show us your stack of your TBR. I'm like, no, if it falls, it will kill me.
Too funny, right? There it is. It's too great.
So Yeah, it definitely sounds very interesting. And I mean, over 4 books, that's definitely a, I guess a saga, I guess you would call it, as, a nice, good,
definitely is a saga. I always refer to it as 3 things. It's brutal, right? Number 1, it's brutal in its psychology. It's brutal in its psychology. I mean, you want to call it a love story because someone sold their soul to save somebody else, go ahead. But if anything, I would say it's about the dark side. It's about heartache, right? Heartache and heartbreak is what it's about. And that's the brutality behind the psychology. But also, I'm a very, 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 very descriptive person. I love my description. So when you go through, these people are being tortured to death by medieval means. I hope you're ready for that, because you're going to feel like you're being tortured by medieval devices. It's a fact, right?
Nice.
I love my description. Oh, brutal, beautiful, and then exhilarating. Exhilarating is the whole police procedural because it moves a mile a minute. You're not going to realize that you're actually reading this 4-book series because it does move a mile. And the beautiful part of it is Gothic. I love atmosphere, right? And go back to all the Gothic horror novels, right? Or Gothic novels you have read, it's all about atmosphere. And Sleepy Hollow itself is a character in the story, too. The mansion, the abandoned mansion, is a character in the story. But Sleepy Hollow it is as well. And if you don't feel like you're walking around the streets of Sleepy Hollow while reading this novel, please text me or contact me and say you didn't do your job well, all right?
Well, and I always say that's very almost Poe-esque in storytelling, because Poe, I think, was one of the masters of really making the scene, the setting, the environment like a character in every story he did. There's times like you think of his stories, and a lot of times you can't even remember the character names really, but you know where it was set, the environment and all that, and so to me, it's like anytime I hear someone talk about, how the setting itself is a living, breathing character, that's very much kind of, to me, it kind of harkens back to that Poe-esque storytelling.
The 1800s to me is like the best century of literature ever. I mean, you think about it, it started with Frankenstein and ended with Dracula. And in between there, you got Poe, you got Washington Irving, you got, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you got Wuthering Heights, right? I mean, you just go through the whole friggin' century, and it's just every 10 years, there's a classic novel as people still read today. That's phenomenal. Absolutely love the 1800s.
Definitely agree. Now, you say, talking about your writing process, you kind of have the beginning and end, and then you get all the stuff in the middle, that you kind of work through. So in sitting down with this, did you see it being, necessarily 4 books, or was it more just because as big of a tome as it was going to be, you were like, oh no, I need to kind of break this up. And so, and then did you have to change anything from how the storytelling goes when you decided to kind of break it into 4 different parts?
As far as breaking it into 4 different parts at that point, when I knew that, did I change anything? No. Because to me, it's still one long book, right? So it's a series, but it's more like a serial. So they all end at cliffhangers. They're just continuation of one book after another. So it's not like book 1 ends and you have an ending and then book 2 is going to come. It's just one long streamlined level of consciousness, right? Silken thread throughout the entire thing. So nothing was changed. As I said, right, before, at a certain point, probably about part 2, I kind of knew that this was going to be a big juggernaut. It's going to be bigger than just your typical, this is, one long book like Jiggly Spot, 156,000 words. I said, this is probably going to go a little bit further. Now, at that time, I do agree. At that time, I said, okay, so let it go. Just let it go. Let it flow. Let it unfold, whatever you got to do. And then I got to what I refer to now in my own mind, the infamous part 5. Part 5 took me a long time to write, just because I think of the detail, and that is the part where in my mind, where the story is, I needed to, as a writer, it's kind of like the middle. So I'm like this, all right, so where is it going? And then where is the end, right? Or where was the beginning? Where is it going type of thing? And I need to make sure that what I wrote on page 80 is going to make sense on page 772. right? So therefore it was like the note taking started happening and like the little plotting and planning of far as, okay, so this happened in part 1, but you know what? In part 7, this isn't the same thing. So I need to go back and start changing things in part 1 to make part 7 make a lot of sense. It's all about that like juggle. It's like, I feel like I'm a fucking clown juggling fucking horror villains, right? Back and forth, right? It's like, all right, so it's like, but the reader doesn't know that this is going on at this point because he didn't say this in part 4, right? So we need to make this 100% clear and get it through the reader's head that this is what's going on. So when it comes out in part 7, it's like, oh, wow, that's a big like reveal. Holy shit. You know, it's like start tying everything up, tying all those plot holes up, get it done nice.
Gotcha. All right. So kind of moving on from the Sleepy Hollow incident, just onto some general question. So I got another one here. What scares you and how does that inspire your writing?
What scares me? Humanity. Humanity scares the shit out of me. As a trauma therapist for 20 years, I could tell you stories, but I won't tell you stories because of HIPAA regulations. That's right. I know you're still listening to me out there, right? The evil that human beings inflict upon each other, if there is a devil, doesn't even compare to what humanity does to each other. So humanity scares the hell out of me, and humanity scares the hell out of me too because I don't want to say brainwashed or whitewashed, but it's like they don't understand themselves and they're always looking for somebody else to tell them who they are, when all they really have to do is look within themselves to find whatever and fix themselves. Every human being is self-healing, right? But people don't do that. They always look to blame. They always look to reach out here and lash out at people. That scares the shit out of me because where does that lead us as a society? In my opinion, as a society, we should be a lot more evolved than we are. And there's a whole devolution thing here that we could get into conspiracy theories. But this is not a conspiracy theory show. I'll save that for another podcast, right? But the case in point, right, of what's going on is it's like people are told one thing when they should be looking somewhere else, right? It's like as a therapist too, people are always like, it's like, here's your pill, solve your problem. Here's this, solve your problem. People are always looking externally for a solution, external solution to an internal problem when they already have the answers within. They just need to be taught those answers from within. But instead of doing so, most people don't even have this opportunity to do so. And then they wind up, that problem just continues to fester and grow. And then they lash out on their fellow human beings. That, to me, I'm not cool with that. People need to take care of their own shit and not lash out on other human beings. So humanity does scare the hell out of me in that regard. And then when you get, with the whole violence thing, but everything going on in the world, there's a lot of insanity going on out there. And here's the one thing, in 20 years of being a therapist, especially a trauma therapist, I've seen everyone. Right? I've seen people from the homeless guy who's an alcoholic, right? And I have seen everyone from the billionaire woman who's also an alcoholic. Amazing. Right? I've seen liberals. I've seen LGBTQ community. I have seen black, white, red, yellow. I've seen everyone at low socioeconomic status, high socioeconomic status. Here's the one thing other than being human beings that they all share in common. Everybody hurts. It's a fact. Every single person hurts. Accept that. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But be kind. And if you don't have anything to say to be kind, maybe give a word of encouragement or maybe just walk away. But don't lash out, right? Let people go through their process. That's all I got to say. But humanity scares the hell out of me. But I also love humanity, and humanity has such great purpose and promise. It's unbelievable. I just wish we would get out of this whole them versus us type of shit, because that's all just bullshit. It doesn't even really truly exist. It's me here. It's you here. I love you. You love me. Let's sing fucking Barney and have a great, happy family. And yes, I almost got the whole song of Barney, and I could have too. I didn't.
For a while there, you got like really deep and dark. And so I do appreciate, from a podcast perspective that you picked it back up at the end. So I really appreciate that, because if not, I was going to have to figure out that damn transition and I didn't want to.
Barney always makes people laugh, especially when I make fun of Barney. I heard they're making a Barney movie, like kind of like the Blood and Honey with Winnie the Pooh. Like they're doing a Barney one.
I loved that movie, but
I still haven't seen it. I gotta watch it.
You haven't seen? Oh, dude, you gotta watch some Blood and Honey. It's
right? B-rated, right? Yes. Just nasty.
Yes, it's a B-rated slasher kind of, and it's awesome.
I do need to watch it.
It's good. Yeah, if you like some just really bad movie, it's like one of those that's like, I mean, it's definitely not like award winning of any shape, form, or fashion, but it's one of those that's like so bad it's good kind of thing, and it's. It's awesome. So I definitely recommend that. So here's a funny question. So do you read your book reviews? And if so, how do you handle negative ones?
I promise myself from now on, I'm not going to read any review under a 4 from now on. Well, what's amazing, though, is like I've gotten a 2-star review and I thought it was a great review. I'm like, I can't believe they actually gave 2 stars. It seems more like they liked the book. It should be like a 4-star review. And then I've seen a 4-star review where they trash the novel. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. So at this point, I try not to read reviews anymore just for that specific purpose. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to get anyway. I could leave a 5-star review and they'll say, it was okay. Well, why is that 5 stars? If it's just okay, that makes no sense to me, right? It's like, but if I see a review where somebody actually put some effort into it, usually no matter what the star rating is, I'll actually do that. I'll actually read that. Because I do like the feedback, and I'm the type of person, I want to write a book that every single person loves, right? So, all right, so you didn't like this, so you know what? Maybe I'm going to try this novel here because I want you to like this novel at least, right? We'll see. But for the most part, I used to read them all the time, right? And then sometimes you get a bad review and you're just like, oh, suck. That's it. It's over, right? This is done. And then it's like, no, not everyone's going to like your fucking novel, asshole, right? Who are you, right? That just doesn't happen, right? Don't happen. So relax. Get over yourself. Keep moving.
Yeah, I had a review. It came in not that long ago, really, for my debut novel, So Fear Not the Dead. Like all the other reviews have really, for the most part, been very glowing reviews. And, because it's a psychological thriller, but it's set in a haunted house. And so it's got all these different elements that kind of working together on it. And like the other day, it's probably a couple weeks ago now. So, but I saw a review. It was like a 1-star and it was like, a lot of people, I expected so much more of this book because of what other people said and all this. And I'm like, all right, so it wasn't for you. I was like, everybody else liked it. So I'll stick with them.
So it's kind of like hit or miss. It's like after a while, it's like, do we really care about all those reviews? What I care about is hearing from the readers that I speak to on almost daily basis, right? What do you guys think, right? Or what did my fellow authors think? I want to hear your feedback because that helps me to become a better writer. Sometimes the reviews don't get us there. Sometimes they do. If it's a well-written review and you can understand what they're saying, okay, I can see their point. Yes. All right, let me change this moving forward. Constructive criticism is a damn good thing. That's a fact. But then some people are just haters too. So you never know what you're going to get by reading that review, Yeah.
Oh, and everybody has kind of a different scale in their head when they're doing those too. I've had some very glowing reviews and it's like, oh my God, this book was so great. It kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. And, all this 3 stars. And I'm like, well, what scale were you going off of? And so everybody kind of has a different view. They're like, oh, if it was a good book and I liked it, it's 3. It's like, for it to be a 5-star, it's got to be the next Lord of the Rings. I'm like, what the hell do you want? And, but
great.
So everybody's got their own kind of like, image of what those stars mean. So
and that's okay. That's why I used to read them and now not so much, right? So I more or less rely on author feedback, readers that have been with me for a long period of time at this point. What do you guys think? Give me your direct feedback so I can understand that, right? That's all. Now, if it's like a periodical or something like that, or, like your Kirkus reviews or the horror review and they gave me a review, yeah, I'm definitely going to read it no matter if it's a glowing review or a bad review because I trust those people and their acumen and what they're saying. So I want to know.
Right. Yep. All right. Well, so I started the Night Crew podcast as a spinoff of my own series, The Night Crew, which is about a team of monster hunters. And so, all of my scripted episodes are deep dives into some kind of a creature. So with that being said, so PD, what is your favorite horror monster?
Okay. So I've been thinking about this for a while. Because I know that you asked this question. I've listened to other podcasts. I'll try to be a good guest.
Yeah, he's been prepping.
I've been prepping. Now, to me, there's three. It comes down to three different ones, right? So, vampires, definitely, werewolves, and then Frankenstein's monster. Now, Frankenstein has been my favorite novel since 11th grade and still remains my favorite novel today. However, in my personal opinion, Frankenstein has not had any good movies that purely reflect what the novel is about. Don't get me wrong. I watch Boris Karloff every freaking Halloween, sometimes even before Halloween comes up, right? Which actually, of the Boris Karloffs, my favorite one is Bride of Frankenstein, which is the closest movie of a Karloff movie related to the novel, right? So I love my Frankenstein. Let me get into this, right? So we got vampires. Now I'm a huge vampire lover. I love my vampires. And if you go to the whole, just go all the way back in the day, right? Obviously, you got Dracula. Before that, you had Vampire that came out at the same time. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. They wrote it together. Can't remember.
John Polidori.
What was it?
John Polidori. John Polidori. He was the one that wrote The Vampire.
Correct. Right. Okay. Perfect. Right. So, you just go way back. Vampires have been around there. Now, the lore of vampires, especially in film, is obviously, right, way out there. It's just absolutely phenomenal. I was actually thinking, what is my favorite vampire movie? And honestly, it's probably still The Lost Boys. I'm a huge Lost Boys.
Thank you. You had me worried there for a second. I was like, please don't say the sparkly ones. Please don't say the sparkly ones. Thank you. If you've listened to this podcast, you know I make fun of the sparkly ones.
Yeah. Good for her. What was her name who wrote it? Suzanne?
Stephanie Meyer.
Stephanie Myers. All right. So Good for you. I appreciate you. I respect you, right? I do 100%. You did something fucking awesome, but vampires don't sparkle. It's okay. Why didn't you just change that, right? Why'd you have to have that? Anyway.
They're killers. They're not a disco ball.
Holy shit. But The Lost Boys and Fright Night, so good, right? So good. Dan.
The late 80s vampire stuff. That was pure gold.
Fact, right? And then I'm also a Gothic person, right? So Interview the Vampire, which actually the new series that came out, I really enjoyed, mostly because of the acting. The acting, to me, every actor nailed their role better than definitely in the movie that had come out like 20, 30 years ago, whatever it is. But the acting was just fantastic. But I love Gothic. So vampires definitely go in there. However, now, I'm also a werewolf guy, right? Now, my favorite horror movie that's probably out there, at least one I would say, I wouldn't say definitely favorite, but one that I 100% watch religiously all the time is The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. I love that. Right? Now, also, I watched The Howling last night. Did you ever see The Howling?
Another good one. I love that.
Good one, right? So good, right? And then Silver Bullet, right? Werewolves aren't as popular as our vampires are, but they definitely have been out there. Now, what's the difference between vampires and werewolves in Frankenstein's monster? Frankenstein's monster is only one motherfucker, right? So how many movies are you going to make about this one guy, right? Victor Frankenstein only meet one dude, right? However, I've been thinking about this long and hard. I'm sorry for the long answer, but my answer to you is my favorite monster is Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein's monster.
I love that he's such a tragic figure. This guy's born, right? Obviously through nefarious means, but he's born. He's abandoned by God. He's abandoned by his father. He's abandoned by humanity, society, everything across the board. Every time and all the guy wants to do is figure out who the hell he is and what the hell is going on. He's a newborn baby. And so what does he do? He gets smart, right? Figures out all this stuff. And what does he do? He accepts who he is and he becomes the fucking monster and kicks ass. That to me is badass. And I can relate to that character, I think, more than any other character, which I truly believe is why that novel, when I read it in 11th grade, was my favorite novel at that time. So I'll go with Frankenstein's monster.
Nice. And I also agree in that there's not been a good adaptation from the book that really captures the true theme of the book, because everything kind of focuses on either, when I say like the man, so Victor Frankenstein, or it focuses on, the monster being a monster, but not that it really is a heart-wrenching book when you read it. And, and the whole thing is a conversation that the monster is having with, this guy.
Yeah.
I won't say he's a ship captain, if I recall. It's been a while since I read it, but yeah, he's retelling the story of it, and so it's and so it's there's not been to me a good adaptation that's really dove into the soul of the book.
What's funny, this is funny in my opinion, the best Frankenstein adaptation I've actually seen pertaining to the novel was, I believe it was a made-for-TV movie with Randy Quaid playing the monster.
About to go to IMDb.
I can only find it as an SD version. Like, they're not even putting it as HD. An SD buy for $9.99. I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and just watch it again. But I can't go with that whole grainy, right? It's bad. But I might have to watch it just because now I've obviously haven't seen this in 30-something years because it hasn't been out, right? It's not popular in any way, shape, or form. So I'd like to see how closely it is related to the book at this point. But I remember when I watched it, and I absolutely loved it when it came out. Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein, or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, to me he fucked it up bad with what he did at the end of it. He fucked it up bad. It's not cool. That's not in the novel. Who are you to mess with perfection, dude? You were going good, too. Why did you do something stupid? It made no sense to me. Now,
so it looks like, Randy Quaid's version, by the way, it is a TV movie. It came out in 1992.
All right. So, yeah.
I found it on his IMDb. I told you I was going to go there.
Perfect. Does it say where you could watch it by any chance?
No, I didn't see that. I didn't see where you could watch it, but
I might just have to buy it. I was looking at it the other day. Now, Guillermo del Toro is coming out with Frankenstein.
I saw that. I was about to ask you if you've seen that there's a new one coming out. It's here in the next couple weeks or so.
Okay, so it's a Netflix movie. So it comes on Netflix November 7th, but they're doing a limited theatrical run. I got my tickets to the IMAX on October 3rd at 7:15 p.m., and I'm very excited. I mean, if anyone's going to do this book right, it's more than likely Del Toro, right? It's a fact, right? So I'm very excited to see it. Now, I have seen the trailers. Love the first trailer, but the second trailer, when they show the monster and what he looks like, to me, that was badass. I'm like, all right, I think he's going to get it. So I'm very excited. But we'll see.
So fingers crossed on that one.
Fingers are definitely crossed.
So I will say, it's interesting that the three that you listed there. So it's very interesting on those three in particular. So in doing a lot of research and stuff into monsters and stuff that I do, because I do enjoy a nice, good creature feature and all that. I had read an essay at one point and I believe it wholeheartedly. So now I just kind of quote it as if, it's my own thoughts, but there are three true, like, original horror creatures, and that's Dracula, that's Frankenstein, and that's Jekyll and Hyde. And so it's substituting werewolf for Jekyll and Hyde. And the reason for that is Dracula is the evil for the sake of evil. It's just, he's a bad dude. That's just what he is. So think of every Jason, Michael Myers, Freddy. They're just evil, plain and simple. Now, the other one, so Frankenstein, is man-made evil. So it's things that we have created. Think everything from the radioactive ants and, all the big insects and anything that we've created comes under that realm. So under the Frankenstein umbrella. And then Jekyll and Hyde is the evil within. So think werewolf. So where anything that comes from inside and it transforms out.
Nice. That's brilliant.
You can put almost every type of horror or every horror creature or things like that inside one of those three buckets.
Nice. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Jekyll and Hyde is just fantastic. Yeah, I agree. The evil within, right? And talk about a metaphor for alcoholism, right? Take a drink, change you who you are. I mean, just fantastic.
Right.
I always say Golem is my Frankenstein novel, right? Jiggly Spot is my B-rated 80s slasher film. The Sleepy Hollow Incident is more or less Jekyll and Hyde. And when he transforms from himself into the demon, there's a way that he does it, which when you find out, you're going to be like, oh, that motherfucker, dude, that's fucking great. Jekyll and Hyde, right? It's good stuff. It really is. You'll like it.
So it was interesting as you were kind of lining up those three. I was like, okay, this very much falls under the kind of the my three buckets. It just kind of I don't usually put werewolf. I put because there's not like that Gothic werewolf novel, but there's Jekyll and Hyde, which is that same concept, just with a different. It goes from Dr. Jekyll, then through the potion, he becomes Mr. Hyde, and he doesn't remember anything that happens as he's Hyde. And, where a lot of werewolf stuff, they're waking up going, crap, what did I do? And so there's a lot of similarity between kind of the werewolf stuff and Jekyll and Hyde.
It's a good one. I watched the American Werewolf in London the other day, too.
Love that. It's got some of the best practical effects, the whole transformation that he does and that effect scene.
I didn't mean to call you Meatloaf, Jack. Right? So good, man. It's so good. I haven't watched it in a couple of years too, but you're right. There is no like Gothic werewolf book, right? That it comes from. Like it doesn't exist. I guess what you're saying is the Jekyll and Hyde kind of incorporates that.
Is kind of that, but I think a lot of our understanding of werewolf, I think really comes down to the Universal, Wolfman. Universal Pictures Wolfman is where a lot of our understanding of or werewolf information kind of comes from. And
Correct.
A lot of the movies have just kind of played upon that. So I think that kind of becomes the basis for a lot of stuff.
Right. Did you ever see the silent film Jekyll and Hyde with John Barrymore? Silent.
I think so.
It's really good.
I think so. Because that's at one point he kind of like falls behind the table. And when he comes back up, he's.
Yeah. But he
I remember in the scene. Yeah.
He distorted like his own face to like become Hyde, right? It wasn't even like camera. It was like he did that himself. It's a brutal movie. So back then they didn't have ratings, so they could really do whatever they wanted, right? So
Yep.
It is really, really good movie. And what I do is I hit the mute button and just play Pink Floyd albums. Play Dark Side of the Moon with that one. It works out perfectly, right? If I watch,
you're supposed to do that with Wizard of Oz.
You could do it with Wizard of Oz too, but I do it with silent horror films. With Nosferatu, put on Pink Floyd's Delicate Sound of Thunder album, like Delicate Sound of Thunder. If you time it right, start the movie and the album at around the same time. It could even be a couple of minutes off. At the end of the movie, when Nosferatu kind of more like is all drunk on blood, all right, and the sun's coming up, the song that'll be playing is Comfortably Numb. So it matches perfect. Matches perfectly. But that's a good way to watch silent horror films. Match them to Pink Floyd albums. You can't go wrong.
Awesome. All right. So as we're kind of starting to wrap stuff up, so outside of writing, what are your hobbies?
Okay. What are my hobbies? I love long walks. I do.
It's like long walks by the beach.
That's actually where I go, too, is the beach. I go for long walks on the beach. It is one of my favorite things. It allows my brain to unwind. Like, my favorite thing to do is actually to sit in nature and think and slip slowly into madness. It's my favorite pastime. I'll be 100% honest. Thinking and brainstorming is my favorite thing to do, right? Without a doubt. But then definitely long walks on the beach. Obviously, I love reading. I love obviously writing, but reading is definitely a hobby. Watching movies. I'm not huge into sports. I love my Yankees, but we suck because we fucked it up last week, right? But even that, like during the season, I'm not like watching every single game that's there. I like football, but if I can't watch the game, I really don't care. So yeah, mostly thinking, walking, meditating. I love to meditate too. I'm a big meditator. Yeah, and brainstorming. I guess hanging out with my kids. Yeah, that's definitely a good hobby. But is that a hobby or just a way of life?
Yeah. Well, and as somebody in the in the psychological field or the psychology field as you are, I'm sure there's got to be a way to kind of decompress and to, kind of unload some of the stresses of the job, which, I mean, writing is probably now that I'm saying that, asking the question, I'm thinking writing is probably that way of time that is really doing that.
Great window. Meditation helps too, though. You see, you take on so much negative energy throughout the day, right? And I work in there's private practice, but historically, and I'm still there too, is I work in treatment centers, mental health and addiction treatment centers to provide trauma therapy to their patients. It's like I could do 10-hour days of just back-to-back client trauma therapy, and I'm a hypnotherapist as well. So it's hypnosis, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I could have somebody at 9 a.m. that's from friggin', Tennessee, and I could have the next person from friggin' England, right? It's friggin' amazing, like the amount of people that I see, but it's all trauma and it's all negative energy, and you're swallowing all that shit all day. So you got to come home and you got to decompress. Meditation definitely helps. That's why I love my long walks. It allows the brain to move, right? Process all that shit out and filter it out. Because you don't want to hold on to any of that shit.
All right. So I'm going to ask one more before we wrap things up. If you could pick someone to do a collaboration with, who would it be?
Ooh, collaboration. Let's see. Well, my man Angel Ramon. That's probably one. He wrote Frogs and Margaritas. I've known Angel for a long time.
Love Angel. Angel's great. I love him.
Beautiful man. So probably going to do something with him. Kayla Frederick. She's written more than a few books. Voices, The Residency. She, to me, is like the queen of psychological horror. Like, she nailed it. She gets it every single time. Vicky Parhampton would be cool. Ben Young would be great to collaborate with. That would be very cool. I met Ben at Books and Brews, and we kind of talked before then, but since then we've been, more communicating and stuff like that. So he would be somebody great to do a collaboration with too.
Gotcha. So yeah, all really, really great people. Friends with all of them. So
they're great people.
All really, really awesome people.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
All right. So wrapping things up. So where can my listeners learn more about you?
Well, obviously I'm on social media, Facebook, TikTok. I have no idea what I'm doing on TikTok, I'll be honest with you. So if you could go there and help me out, that would be great, right? Some supporters say, hey, asshole, do this instead. Oh, I'm very receptive to that. That's not a problem, right? Instagram, but also I have a Substack, actually. Think about it, my newsletter, Substack. And it's called PD's Alternative Fiction, and that's where I'm posting. I actually have 4 novels on there right now that I'm doing. One is Girl on a Mission, is a psychological thriller. 2 is Catfight. That's what I call good, gory fun. It's a possession story about a cat that's possessed by a demon that terrorizes his adopted family. And then there's The Hypnotist, which I refer to as a sci-fi extravaganza of insanity. It's best described as Robert Langdon. Do you know who Robert Langdon is?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yep. Robert Langdon meets Angels and Demons, Da Vinci Code. Right? So Robert Langdon meets Constantine, the wild one.
Interesting.
And that's all on my Substack. That's the best place. Definitely the best place to go. And what's funny is all 3 of those stories are actually winding down. I'll probably be done with them within the next couple of months. So you can actually read all those stories for free right then and there. And on Tuesdays, my daughter does this for me. I don't do it myself. I won't take credit for it. But it's called the Horror and Sci-Fi Chronicles newsletter. What she does every Tuesday, it comes out and she does deep dives, right? So she'll list all the new releases in books, movies, and television. She puts a quiz on there. She does like deep dives into current industry trends and then historical tidbits and stuff like that. Like I said, it's not mine, but she does a great job. It's really good. So, and that's on every Tuesday. So you get that too. So go to PD's Alternative Fiction. Just go to Substack. You'll find me there. My website is on there too, pdalleva.com. And I do have limited edition signed and numbered hardcovers and paperbacks of the Sleepy Hollow Incident series on that website too. Check that out.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure and put all the links in the show notes. So, listeners, if you want to find out more about PD, make sure you look in the show notes. You'll find, like I said, all the links in there. Other than that, I've really appreciated, chatting with you. It's been a great, about an hour worth of talking. So
Brad, thank you for having me, man. It's been great hanging with you.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I really appreciate it. So with that, I'll go ahead and end this out. So thanks again for sticking around.
Thank you, my man. Bye-bye.
Well, that's it from the Night Crew podcast and my conversation with PD Alleva. I have links to where you can find PD in the show notes. Follow him on all the socials and pick up his books. You don't want to miss out on the Sleepy Hollow incident. So, if you had a good time, make sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, and leave a rating, hopefully 5 stars. If you want updates on my writing, you can follow me on Facebook or TikTok at Brad Ricks Author. You can also find copies of my novels wherever you like to buy books. But if you hop over to my website, bradricks.com, you can purchase signed copies of any of my novels. Speaking of, the Night Crew Book 2 is now available. Grab your copy today if you haven't already. I'm Brad Ricks, reminding you to stay out of graveyards after dark, question people who don't show up in mirrors, and try not to lose your head. Until next time, keep your curtains drawn, your sense of humor sharp, and your blood inside your body. Thanks for listening.